Hi guys from Pax Europiana, this time back from Attersee in Upper Austria, my home region, and Sunset Talks, and I'm talking now about the escalating situation between Russia and us. Because it's us, it's not just Ukraine. When the Russian tanks really moving now significantly into the Ukrainian heartland, that will be an utter disaster for Europe. And just Mr. Kubela, the foreign minister, was at the UN, he made it very clear. And you know, everything looks so peaceful here. It's really very peaceful and beautiful sunset setting. But we should be aware that this will be fully changing the European landscape, the European dynamics, the security framework, but also the way we do business. And so I call for all Austrians to leave the Russian corporate boards. Mr. Schüssel must leave Lukoil. There's no doubt. It's not a private company in the sense, you know. It's obviously everything in Russia is state organized. If it's his argument that this is a London-based stock exchange company, he sits there in order to make sure that the Russian gases and oil is bought in Austria. It's not because of his whatever great competence on the energy sector. He is there to safeguard the Russian energy consumption in Austria. The same is true also for Mr. Kern, who claims he gets no money for his state railway company. That I want to really see the proof of. And also for Mrs. Kneißl, who gets 500,000. That's documented. She has confessed. And that's really outrageous in Rosneft. What's her competence on Rosneft? They all must resign. And as well, every Austrian businessman who serves as a consul of the Russian Republic in Austria must resign. I had just this debate with the Bakaltrin guy, and he threatened me to sue me. Guys, you know, it's very simple. Russia is turning into the enemy, and with the enemy you cannot represent the enemy. You have to cross the lines. That's the famous thing. You run over, then you are Russian, and then you work for the Russians. It's quite simple. The process is very clear. In all human history, if you are trading with the enemy, you are an enemy agent. It's very simple. And it's Russia declaring war against the free world, against Ukraine. It's also quite simple process. And they have attacked another country, incorporated 2 parts of it already, or 3 if you want to see Lugansk and also Donetsk as two separate states in a way. And then they are not, obviously. They will be now annexed. And then it's very clear, if they cross the contact line again, or they even do worse scenarios, there are many of them, as they have announced, and they are seemingly ready to do, obviously then this is war. Then you will have to choose sides, because we cannot remain neutral in this breakdown of the European peace order. It's impossible. If you are neutral, then you are supporting the attacker. Austria must join NATO, by the way. That's very clear. The EU must join NATO, and it will be. You will see that now this will be all things which were now for 70 years so secure and so clear. They will all change now. And all these people who have served Russian interests in the last 15 years and are getting more and more insights and information in Austria, it's more famous in Germany, but in Austria also Leitl. This must be stopped. The Sochi dialogue, this kind of Van der Bellen initiated pro-Russian jamboree kind of peace talks. You know, Russia is the enemy then. You know, it doesn't need communication channels. Yeah, there will be diplomatic channels, obviously, with the enemy, obviously. There will be maybe, after some time, there will be peace talks. That's what enemy nations do. But it is the enemy, and you cannot serve parallel as a honorary consul of Russian Federation in Upper Austria and make business in Russia and in Ukraine. No, we will stop all trade, we will stop all tourism, we will stop all access of persons and goods and services in the capital markets. That's, you know, that's a physical confiscation of assets. I have made it very clear. There's a lot of, on Attersee, there will be a lot of Russians owning something. Confiscated. That's what nations at war do. That there's an enemy trading with the enemy act. I have copied it in my article for Ukraine Journal today. It's very clear. This is online. It's easy to find. 1970, America and Austria declared war, and then they were confiscating each other's properties. The United States have confiscated a lot of German properties in the United States in 1970s. So did 1939 the British. At the moment there is the status of war, and then we are going into this kind of economic war. I understand obviously that not the Austrian tanks which are not existing will not fight the Putin's panzers in the steppe, yeah, obviously, and we have no assets militarily anywhere which are meaningful beside France maybe and Britain, yeah, and the Americans obviously, and that takes half a year to deploy. Putin knows that very well, that Germany is disarmed and Austria is disarmed and Poland has a bit, but you know the only meaningful tank force is the Ukrainian one, obviously. And once they will be defeated, it's the European planes are open for him to take. I don't think that will happen because we are NATO and America will protect us if necessary with the nuclear umbrella. But you know that we have to talk about this already is by itself a complete disaster and a breakdown of the European appeasement order, which always we have to talk to Putin, talk to Putin, talk to Putin. For 8 years now, this was the permanent mantra. I said in myself when I was in 2016 and coming to Ukraine, I said this is an open wound. We have to do something. We have to come to an agreement. I made the agreement. NATO membership of Ukraine, like the BRD, like this is the logical role model. We had already a Cold War over a country. It was exactly solved like this, that it was divided. I'm for division. There's no doubt about it. Putin has this 7%. Now, you know, that's the division. Yeah? If he takes more, it will be ultimately another war. And the war will not be so easily to be resolved. Yeah? He might be able to take more land, but at what huge cost? And it will be certainly that the Ukrainians will be defending themselves, obviously. So we have a lot of losses, and maybe he will have the possibility to take more land. But what remains of Ukraine ultimately will not actually very fast join NATO and the EU, as we have seen in the confrontation. It will force a much closer unity between America and the EU and NATO, and all the things I have predicted now will happen. And we could have avoided all these things if Merkel would not have always this dialogue with Russia. Yes, we can buy them in with more energy. Putin is very emotional about Ukraine. He ranted off 1 hour about Ukraine and Lenin, the Kaiser. I mean, it was ridiculous, starting with the Kaiser and the piece of Brest and all these things. Yeah, I mean, withdrawing 100 years of history. But that's how he is. That's how he thinks. Yeah, and he has this kind of dictatorial role, this tyrannical situation. Even many of his closer circle, the economics guys, they will certainly see that this will be leading to the complete failure of Russia, because it's unwinnable war against the West in our conditions. Of course, you know, he thinks, Putin thinks, of course, we are completely useless and we will be somehow breaking down, but it won't be. And all these people who are now understanding Putin and understanding him so well, and you know, we understand, we have to see the Russian view of things. Yeah, we have to also understand that, you know, Ukraine is Russian and all these things. Yeah, I see a lot of these commentators. They will see how hard they will be very lonely very soon, and they will be all coming on very heavy pressure. And it's just a friendly advice, ultimately, before you will be investigated for your links with Russia. Simply resign, Mr. Honorary Consul, or basically withdraw from the, whatever, to resign from these boards, Mr. Schüssel, Mr. Kern, Mrs. Kneisel, and of course Mr. Schröder and all of them. It will be no happy summer holidays. It will be very, very difficult, yeah, if you don't do that, because you show the moral kind of total neutrality, the kind of lack of character, the greed in taking so much Russian money in, while the Ukrainians are squashed under Putin's panzers. And ultimately it's treason. And that's high treason against Europe, against Austria, against neutrality, because you are helping a war-faring nation. I mean, it's very similar when I, for example, serve in the Ukrainian army. I will lose my Austrian neutrality. When Mr. Schüssel is serving Putin at the corporate board, he should lose the Austrian citizenship. and of course have a, normally when you do that, you serve in an enemy military force, you get, I just heard it from Albania, but it's about similar, I think everywhere, 10 to 15 years of prison, because it's treason. So I would really be very careful in the case of Mr. Kern and Mr. Schüssel, Mrs. Gneisel and Mr. whatever consul of in Upper Austria on behalf of the Russians, because this will be all very significantly investigated and very soon. And you will be not just in the media or my posts. Some say that they want to sue me now. Good luck, yeah, no. I'm poor like the church mouse, yeah. But it will be your problem very soon. It will be a very significant problem when the state prosecution will come and knock at your door. What money you received from Russia, under what conditions did you pay taxes, and why, and what kind of favors you did to Russia, what kind of secrets you were telling to the enemy, and so on and so on. And this is exactly what will happen. And I can just be very, the smart way is, resign of all your obligations towards Putin, disclose what you had, make an open book and say, I'm very sorry, I didn't know that he will be, everybody should have known it after 2008 and 2014, but I was simply weak character, I was greedy, I was accepting all this money from Russia, and I'm Mr. Wolfgang Schüssel, I apologize to Austria and to Europe, to all my friends I betrayed, and all the principles, and I will go to the grave of Alois Mock and say, I'm really sorry, Alois, that I betrayed you. That is the statement. I can write it on Twitter. And for Kern, obviously, he's anyhow a left-wing servant of Putin and of Soviet Union, so he will not have to go to anybody, but he will just, face the prosecution. And that will be happening on all levels. And it's just my friendly advice for everybody. Now they say they have, anyhow they are so rich, And so then you say simply, oh, I'm really sorry, the situation has changed, I resign. Putin can put you after the war has ended and there will be maybe some kind of normality again. They can call you again, and as you are a great service provider for Russia, after the war is over, you can probably, or there is some kind of peace settlement, you can maybe go back again in the services of the foreign hostile nation, if that is then no longer a problem, maybe. I hope as well for peace, because I see myself as a peace activist. Yeah? I'm an economist in principle, but I turned peace activist because I think it's outrageous that we have war again in Europe, and I feel really very sorry for all the Ukrainians. They are Europeans like me, and they're just further to the east. And I'm old enough to remember German partition and Austrian neutrality, how it was in the 80s, and I'm very passionately rejecting such a situation, and that Russia behaves again like the Soviet Union, or whatever Russian imperial power, whatever is the legitimacy. Maybe it changes a bit in the economic context, but principally it is that Russian tanks and Russian armies rule Europe, and the future of all of us is decided in the Kremlin, and that is unacceptable for me. That's why I write all these arguments and all these texts, and I will publish even more in the coming days. And I can just call for everybody to be very reasonable. And even, for example, Leitl said something, we have European solidarity. Even Orban was not, he's dodging the issue. He tries to dodge the bullet, but I was luckily already calling him out when I was in Budapest, and I keep the videos online, and everybody who is now siding with Russia will be having no friends anymore left in the free world. No great visits in Washington, no Brussels money. Everybody will face the challenge of defending his treason in the courts of public opinion and in the courts directly. And everybody who is not understanding that and calls for a dialogue, has not understood the urgency of the situation. And you can just listen friendly to my advice, and I recommend everybody to withdraw very clearly from all these positions. And they were lucrative, they were well paid. You got nice concessions, nice mining concessions in Russia, or corporate boards, or Russia was buying your books or whatever, or putting you some money in the trunk. I don't know how that works. Normally it works like this, that they get direct contracts in the case of employees or political pensioners. But if you're a businessman, you, for example, get a concession, mining concession, a gold concession. This is how Russia normally works. That's also how they do the party funding. they normally do it indirectly. So it's all completely legal for an Austrian entrepreneur to fund an Austrian party. That's according to the regulations, they do that anyhow. And then, for example, this party chairman they want to support gets, for example, has a best friend who is anyhow funding him. So it's a total legal operation. But this entrepreneur then gets something totally surprising, kind of mining concession or gold mine or petrol trade deal in Russia or with Russian interests, and suddenly is having a lot of extra money which he can share with the party he is anyhow supporting, but he's just more liquid then, and it's more lucrative for all sides, and that's how it works. And they are smart, and that is of course hard to prove any kind of direct connection and hard to prove any legality, but we are not stupid. And I can just call in this escalating situation, everybody who has done things with Russia get clean it up, clean up the mess, resign, disclose, resign, and hope for mercy. And there will be mercy for Schüssel, I'm sure he will not have to go to prison, and for Kern and for Kneißl. But for the lower calibers, I'm not really sure if there will be such a kind of state raison of understanding. But if they don't get clean, then the pressure will mount, and it was today already in profile, and many people will take it up, and the pressure. Now when the full escalation comes, the military escalation, it will be very bloody, and it will be a lot of pains and tears. It will also concern all our banking and insurance and energy interests in Russia, and that will be very, very complicated and expensive for the Austrian state, the Austrian businesses. And I just call everybody to be smart, to withdraw. You should have done in 2008, in 2014. You were tempted by the opportunities. Now you have to write it off or sell it, or whatever kind of process to maybe sell it to the Russian state or to some other competitors from China. And because this confrontation will not easily disappear in no way. It will just get worse, and we will drift into a big conflict, and this is by the Russian making, not by mine. It's not me inventing the things. It's Russia driving this agenda. It's Russia ordering the tanks into Ukraine. The deeper they go, the more the West reactions will be. Who is then on the side of Russia will be against the West and will be an enemy of the free world. And I wouldn't like to be that one. I, in general, consistently in my last 30 years since I first time went to Belgrade in '92, but even in the 80s when I was just a 15-year-old student for Ronald Reagan, was consistently on the side of the West and the free world, and they have protected us from the Soviets. They kept Upper Austria, southern Upper Austria, free in '45. Mr. Clark, thank you very much, and the others. Patton, Clark, the famous people who kept Upper Austria free, and I'm on that side. Yes, that's my side, and I don't know who changed to the east. It was maybe lucrative, sometimes it was also possible, maybe it was a smart idea to make some millions, but now it's a time to call it out as treason, and I would be very careful not to be accused for treason, and who could then sues me for Bakaltrin, yes, that I damaged the reputation of a solid Austrian company in that context. I'm really very sorry, because I'm now 30 years working for Austrian economic interest abroad, and I don't want to damage anybody's reputation. That's not the case, and I apologize to anybody's interest I have harmed in my call for boycott. But if you employ, the Bakaltrin employs people in the Russian service, and then they defend the Russian position in the media, then the Rubicon is crossed, and then I have to call everybody out who is on the Russian side, and it will be not just me. The world is very transparent today. It will be everybody knowing that you work with the Russian interest, and then you are a traitor. That's called Verrat. Staatsverrat, high treason, and I wouldn't like to be in that line of thinking, and it is the case. So good, so far, so nice. It's really beautiful here. I love the Attersee. I recommend to visit here, and when you're rich already, you are anyhow happy here. So no need for further Russian money. And if you think you can live off Russian money under the conditions of war, you certainly are mistaken. Good. For peace. Thanks a lot. Bye.